It can't rain all the time. The Crow is based upon the graphic novel written by James O'Barr. It is directed by Alex Proyas. Stars Brandon Lee as Eric Draven, Rachel Davis as Sarah, Ernie Hudson as Sergeant Albrecht, Michael Wincott as Top Dollar, Sophia Shinas as Shelley Webster, Anna Levine as Darla, David Patrick Kelly as T-Bird, Lawrence Mason as Tintin, Angel David as Skank, Michael Massey as Fun Boy, Tony Todd as Grange, and John Polito as Gideon. So what is The Crow about? Rock singer Eric Draven and his fiancée Shelley are brutally killed the night before Halloween, which is also the night before their wedding. Exactly 1 year later, with the help of a crow, Eric wakes from the dead and takes revenge for his death and the death of the woman he loved. It is a creepy and gothic tale with a dark, scary atmosphere. Hello YouTubers, my name is Frederick Lopez and you are in a new Action Reaction. Today I'm going to be going over my review and thoughts over the 1994 cult classic, The Crow, starring Brandon Lee. It is based upon the graphic novel written by James O'Barr named The Crow. And there's just a sense of tragedy with this film. It stars Brandon Lee, of course, which is the son of Bruce Lee, but he died tragically during the making of this film. A gun went off and it didn't have the fake rounds. It wasn't a blanket, and it basically was like a regular bullet, just pierced through him and it killed him. And it's just a tragic story, not only given the circumstances of the family and the actor, but the circumstances of the character he was playing in the story. And The Crow has always been a story based on tragedy or just surrounded by it. There's a shroud of tragedy in this. The graphic novel written by James O'Barr was written after he was going to get married. He had like his fiancée. He was happy and she died in a car wreck. And through that grief of losing the person he loved, he wrote a story about loss, grief, and death in the graphic novel The Crow. Later on, that graphic novel was adapted into a film which starred Brandon Lee. And you can definitely tell the influence Batman 1989 had on this, as well as the film Darkman on The Crow. It's directed by Alex Proyas. Now, Alex Proyas after this would end up directing films like Dark City, I, Robot, and Knowing, starring Nicolas Cage. It's a very dark and atmospheric film, and you could definitely tell the atmosphere and the way it was shot was definitely a precursor to films like Sin City, and then Brandon Lee's performance was precursors to Heath Ledger's The Joker from The Dark Knight. Definitely a lot of other comic book-based films took influence upon this film. Now, how does it rate as an action movie? It is a superb action story. It's a revenge tale. These men did wrong to him. He's back with these supernatural abilities to basically enact vengeance. That's his only goal, is to kill these people. He doesn't want to change the world. He runs across people he knew in his life, and he doesn't really care. They're kind of in his way. He only cares about one thing, and that is killing the people who killed him and his fiancée. And that's what makes this a very different film, as well as a story. It's not your usual superhero story. It has elements of other comic book and graphic novel stories, but it's really a story about vengeance. And as an action film, it follows the same vein as The Punisher and the 1987 RoboCop. That's fantastic. Brandon Lee, it's his last performance. He died making the film, but he gives an all-around fantastic, superb performance. It's not one of those where like he passed away And it was happened to be a good story. Like this, he really would have been a superstar. He was an actor. You could tell he gave his all in this performance, and I think he really would have been something big if he had not been killed during the making of this film. This is a phenomenal performance. It's one of those where it makes you wonder what other films would he have gone on to do, you know? He just gives a stellar performance as Eric Draven. But Brandon Lee gave one of those performances that was just groundbreaking and I think award-worthy in The Crow. Ernie Hudson, I like him as Sergeant Albrecht. This is one of my favorite roles of his besides Ghostbusters. He's pretty much a police officer who is there at the scene, and he was demoted, and I like the stuff he has to go through. In a way, you get to see what happened to the characters a year later, but also what grief does and how people deal with it, and also the ramifications of that one night on everybody's lives. Sarah, the little girl plays her, does a fantastic job. You really get to feel the sorrow she has and how close she was with Shelley and Eric, and then vice versa when Eric has to basically relive those memories after seeing her. He didn't want to reveal himself to her, but he sees the effect and love that him and Shelley had upon that character. And it's a very, very deep movie. Again, it has themes of death, grief, but also with love, which is very, very endearing, and what makes it really stand out aside from the action. The villains, they're pretty much your regular villains, T-Bird, everybody. They're just scum. But the leader of it, Top Dollar, is played by Michael Wincott. Now, he played the One-Eyed Man in Three Musketeers. He was on Alien Resurrection, Along Came a Spider. I liked his performance in this. It was larger than life, yet very grounded. He is one of those villains where he doesn't have direct involvement with Eric Draven's death, but he's basically the cause of it. He's the reason why all this is going on in the city of Detroit, and what happened to Eric Draven and his fiancée, Shelley. He's the reason why. And that's an interesting twist, because in the graphic novel, he wasn't killed in his apartment for a tenant. Pretty much what happened is that he had a car trouble, and the bad guys go across, and they kind of offer help, and they pretty much kill him right in front of her and rape and kill his fiancée. And he comes back a year later, and it's T-Bird, Funboy, and all of them. They're like the main villains, but Top Dollar's not a main bad guy, so they really expanded upon it and changed a few things. And that's another thing that makes The Crow great, is that it's not entirely like the graphic novel, but it has the same spirit, style of the graphic novel. It's almost a black and white film. It's very dark and gothic. The graphic novel's in black and white, and yeah, it added some things that made it work for a movie, and that's one thing I respect, is that you can make an adaptation that has the same feeling and some of the same plot of the graphic novel, but you make a few embellishments and make it more grand and pretty much make it work for a film. And this is a superb film. The action, again, is great, and the soundtrack, oh my god, let me get to the soundtrack. The soundtrack is amazing. It has Stone Temple Pilots. They got an MTV award for Big Empty. The Cure song Burn. Burn by The Cure is such a great scene. Alex Proyas really used the music very well in a lot of the scenes, and it just has an awesome soundtrack. This film is the reason why you saw a lot of the Crow stuff merchandise, clothing, and music at Hot Topic stores before Twilight came in. Like this, yeah, this is one of the best soundtracks. It really aids the film. And it's a good film without the soundtrack. The soundtrack just elevates it, or the film elevates the soundtrack. Either or, it is a fantastic soundtrack. So if you have downloadable files for like MP3 or whatever, or a half-price bookstore or CD store, definitely check out The Crow. It is a fantastic soundtrack, and I really, really love the style and the music of this film. But yeah, there's so many memorable moments. I love it when he makes the lighter with the crow. He has the lighter fluid, and he kills T-Bird and makes a crow emblem. There's a lot of good stuff with Sarah's mother, Darla, and that part with Fun Boy is really insane. And I just love how he toys with the bad people. He just really doesn't care, and it's almost like haunting. It's almost like he's their vengeance, their judgment. And I love it. And the face paint, the whole costume is great. And again, like I said earlier, you could tell the influences it had on the Heath Ledger Joker. And then the atmosphere as far as the way it's filmed. I love that burn by the Cure scene and it going out of the building. It has a dark gothic vibe, and it really has what Batman 1989 and Darkman built upon. and you later on saw similar styles in Sin City. But yeah, The Crow is an all-around enjoyable action movie, and I give it a 5 out of 5 and an A+. This is one of those action movies that stands up after 20 years. It stands up still to this day. None of the sequels have matched it. It's like Highlander in a way where you had one great film that's pretty isolated, and all the sequels have been trying to capture what the first one had. And this is the only Crow, and it should not be rebooted. It'd be an insult to Brandon Lee to reboot this film. He died while making this film. And there's only one Crow film. The sequel should be Judgment of That enough. And Brandon Lee is the Crow. And this is a tragic yet amazing send-off to his career and as an individual. It's just so eerie. It's an eerie film. You get an eerie vibe watching it, knowing that this is his last film. And given the circumstances of the character, all around it's just a fantastic film that really gets to you emotionally. And I enjoy action movies as far as entertainment, but like this is one of those that has a deep story and really moves you in an emotional way that you're not going to expect. I first saw it in high school. I was too young to see it when it first came out, so I saw this in high school and I fell in love with The Crow. Good action films not only have great storytelling and great effects and great stunts, but they give you characters that you invest in. They have charisma, and also they have challenges for the characters. And even though he's dead and almost invulnerable in this, he does face some challenges. And all around, it is a powerful film that's none like any other I've seen at all. So yeah, the actions, Brandon Lee did most of his own stunts, and they got some doubles since he passed away during making it. And they got it completed, and it is a tour de force film. The Crow is one of those films that reminds you, like, even though people in our lives may be gone one day, true love is forever if we hold their memories and what they taught us in our hearts. And it's very bittersweet and tragic. Both the graphic novel and the film really show us themes of death. And if anybody's going through some tough times, and even not, it's great to read and watch the movies. There's so much pain and grief behind both projects, but I think they're both more powerful for that. So yeah, 5 out of 5 and an A+. If you have not seen The Crow, I would highly recommend seeing The Crow. It is one of those films that's a real hidden gem. It's sad, not many people talk about it, but if you're into superhero films and some of the darker ones, see this. This is a film that started it all. Without this, you wouldn't have Dark Knight and you would not have Sin City. This is a graphic novel adaptation done right. And yeah, it's a fantastic action film. That is my reaction to Brandon Lee's The Crow. If you haven't seen it, go check it out. If you have seen the film, let me know what you think in the comments below. What was the first time you saw The Crow? Anyway, that's my review of The Crow. Great performances all around and a really touching story. And Brandon Lee, for his last performance, and he just gives everything. He really would have been something, but at least he got to be in this film and really show us what he was capable of. And it would have been on the brink of something incredible, but at least we have this film to remember his memory by. And it is a fantastic film that will forever have a place in cinema.